They called me a time waster while I was still on the call. If you've ever felt underestimated by your own blood, if you've ever poured your heart into something only to have it stolen in silence, stick with me. Because that moment, it wasn't the end. It was the ignition. Nothing exploded. No screaming, no slammed doors. Just one call, one line, and a door I didn't even know existed creaked open behind me. I'm Lyra Vance. I'm 32. I design modern, sustainable furniture from a small studio in Austin, Texas. What started as a one-woman Etsy shop grew into something bigger, something that felt like mine. But on that Monday morning, I learned how easily mine can turn into theirs. I just wrapped a pitch call with a local vendor, half distracted, nursing the last of my lukewarm coffee when I clicked the wrong tab. Zoom didn't close. It jumped to another meeting, one I wasn't supposed to be in. My breath caught as I realized the names on screen. Talon, my brother. Maris, my mother. I froze, unsure if they could see me. The screen was dark, just their faces. Talon's voice was cool, familiar in the worst way. She's just a time waster. We give her credit to shut her up. Once she signs the transfer docs, we move on. Silence. Then Maris added, she won't even notice. Lyra's always been distracted. The screen blurred as my hand jerked, knocking my mug sideways. Coffee seeped into my sketch pad, staining weeks of concepts. But I didn't care. Because they'd said it. Out loud, casually. Like I was a child to be handled, not a founder with a business. I hit record. Then watched as they laughed about selling my brand behind my back. About using my own designs to pitch to investors I'd never met. She'll thank us someday, Talon smirked. The call ended with a click. Zoom disconnected. The silence afterward wasn't quiet. It was deafening. I sat there staring at the reflection in my laptop screen. Hair pulled into a lazy bun, oversized hoodie, graphite smudges on my cheek. I looked like a mess. And suddenly I felt like one. How long had they been planning this? How long had I been sitting in that studio, blind? I opened the recording again, played it back. Then again. My fingers curled around the edge of the desk, nails digging into the soft wood. I trusted them, I whispered. My voice cracked like cheap veneer. I'd given Talon access to my servers. Just in case, he said. Let Maris peek at my financials. For peace of mind. I'd thought we were a family, not predators in proximity. I shut the laptop, hard. But the echo didn't silence what I now knew. They were planning to sell my name, my work, my vision. The rain outside had stopped, but the air in the studio was thick, like something had spoiled without me noticing. I looked around, chairs in progress, walnut boards stacked in the corner, renderings pinned to corkboard walls. This place was me, and they were already carving it up. I reached for my sketchbook, fingers shaking. A graphite line trailed across the page. Then another. My hand moved before my mind caught up, shading, designing, anchoring myself in movement, because stillness would break me. The chair I was drawing wasn't new. It was one I'd started months ago and abandoned. A low, curved back, carved arms that cradled, not confined. I had called it the hush. Now it felt like a protest. My phone buzzed. Text from Talon. Quick chat tonight? Mom says you've been stressed. Let's regroup. Regroup? My jaw tightened. He didn't know I'd heard. Didn't know I'd seen the rot beneath his polished grin. On the desk, my grandfather's old drafting ruler slid as I reached for my charger. A loose page fluttered to the floor. I stared at it. Not one of mine. The paper was thicker, yellowed. A sketch in pencil, clean, masterful lines. A chair unlike any I'd ever seen. At the bottom, in my grandfather's looping hand, create your world, Lyra. I sank to the floor. The ache in my chest cracked open something deeper. He'd said that to me once, years ago, in his sunlit workshop in San Marcos, back when I was 16. Back before Maris called design a phase, and Talon rolled his eyes at my dreams. In that tiny, sawdust-scented space, I'd felt real, valid, unapologetically creative. I held the page gently, afraid it would vanish. How had this gotten into my sketchbook? Was it just forgotten or planted? The radiator hissed beside me. The silence wasn't safe anymore. Someone had betrayed me, that was clear. But someone else? Someone might have left a clue. I looked down at the sketch again, then back to my laptop, and made a decision. I wasn't going to collapse. Not this time. I was going to fight. But the real question was, who else knew? The morning after the call, I didn't open my laptop. Instead, I sat on the floor of my studio, wrapped in the silence. The page with my grandfather's sketch lay in front of me, creased from where my fingers had held it too tightly. The scent of wood polish and paper glue clung to the air, faint, familiar. And suddenly, I was 16 again. Grandpa's workshop always smelled like cedar and lemon oil. Warm light streamed through those old horizontal windows, catching on the fine dust that never quite settled. I'd sit cross-legged on a stool twice my size, sketchbook balanced on my knees, while he planed slabs of walnut like he was coaxing secrets from them. "Create your world, Lyra," he'd say, handing me a fresh sheet of paper as if it were treasure. "Design the future. Don't wait for it." He saw something in me back then, something I hadn't dared to claim for myself. The first time I posted one of my designs online, 7 years ago, I didn't even tell anyone. I just uploaded a mock-up of a sculptural reading chair with a caption, "For quiet people in loud rooms." It went viral in 48 hours. Comments poured in, strangers who felt seen, people asking if they could buy it, retailers offering partnerships. My inbox was chaos. My hands shook. But my heart, it beat with something I hadn't felt since that old workshop. Purpose. I was 25. I had no business plan, no degree in design, just grit and instinct. And for the first time, that was enough. At first, Talon acted impressed, supportive even. He'd stop by with his coffee, glance at the sketches, toss a smirk, but there was always something in his voice. "Cute hobby," he said once, poking the edge of a prototype I'd left drying on the balcony. "Maybe one day it'll be a real business." He smiled like he was teasing, but his eyes didn't smile. Not once. Maris was worse. She didn't criticize directly. She weaponized concern. "This is sweet, Lyra," she'd say over dinner, "but don't you think it's time to consider stability? Maybe get your teaching certificate? You were always good with kids." Her fork hovered midair, waiting for my agreement. When I didn't give it, she sighed. A disappointed, well-practiced sigh, and I shrank. Every time. I kept building anyway. Through the late nights, the shipping disasters, the back orders, the customer emails that made me want to cry, I built it. I made something real. By 30, I was fully self-employed. By 31, I had 4 part-time contractors and a studio lease in East Austin. I called the brand Vance Works. It felt like claiming something I was never allowed to own, the family name. But that name came with strings. Talon offered to help scale the brand, said he had contacts in venture capital, said I needed infrastructure, said I could trust him. And I did. God help me, I did. I gave him limited access, logins to the brand portal, vendor dashboards, just enough to advise. But it started to feel off, like the way he once paused too long before deleting an email, or the time I caught him forwarding client lists to his own inbox. I asked him once, lightly, "What are you doing with those?" He smiled. "Just streamlining things. You'll thank me later." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe I wasn't being handled, but the feeling lingered like smoke from a candle just snuffed. And then there was Maris. A few months ago we were having lunch at her place. Those stiff, overly polite mother-daughter lunches we pretended were normal. She poured wine too early and said, "Talon's worried about you." I blinked. "Worried?" "He says you seem distracted, like maybe the pressure's getting to you." She tilted her head. "He's only trying to help." That was her favorite trick, twisting concern into a leash. I laughed it off that day, but something in my stomach had turned. And now, after hearing that call, the pieces rearranged. They hadn't just been dismissive, they were strategic. My jaw tightened as I stood from the floor, limbs aching from sitting too long. I ran my hand along the edge of the drafting table, its surface scarred from years of use. In the corner, my latest prototype sat unfinished, a sleek rocker made from bent ash. I'd stopped working on it when the betrayal blew a hole in my motivation, but looking at it now, I felt something twitch back to life. My phone buzzed. Talon again. "Family Zoom tomorrow," the message read. 9 a.m. Please don't be late. The gall, the audacity. Did he think I was just going to show up, smile, and nod? My thumb hovered over the reply button. Then I deleted the draft text. He didn't deserve my words. Not yet. Instead, I picked up the old sketch again, the one Grandpa left. The lines were precise, sharp where they needed to be, flowing where they could afford softness. It wasn't just a design, it was a message. He'd seen this coming, or something like it. A legacy, tucked away between graphite and ghost. As I turned the page over, something fell out. A small, sticky note. It read, "If they turn, use this." No signature, just those 6 words. My heart kicked like a dropped hammer. He knew. He knew they might try to take what I built. I stood there, gripping the note, as if it could anchor me to the floor. But it didn't. It lifted me, pulled me forward. I walked over to the laptop, opened it slowly. The audio file was still there. So was the sketch. So was the anger. And now, a plan. But first, I had to know what else they were hiding. I clicked into my brand's back-end system, scrolled, paused. Then something caught my eye. A folder I didn't create, labeled Pending Transfer. My chest tightened. And under it, a username I didn't recognize. Not Talon, not Maris. Someone else had access. Someone else was already inside. I couldn't sleep. At 2:13 a.m., I was still sitting at my desk, the studio dim except for the glow of my laptop screen. Outside, the wind rustled the oak branches just beyond the window, casting restless shadows against the walls. The city was quiet, but inside my chest, everything rattled. That folder, Pending Transfer, created by someone I didn't know. I clicked through every subtab of my dashboard, retracing digital steps I hadn't taken. The brand's backend was pristine, until it wasn't. Tucked between 2 invoices, I spotted it, a recently deleted file. My fingers trembled as I restored it. The subject line hit like a slap. Draft, sell next week. Lyra won't notice. The email was from Talon, sent to Maris. No greeting, just business. Finalize the appraiser paperwork this week. We pitch by Friday. She still thinks this is a trial version. No clue we already moved licensing through the Shell Corp. Keep her distracted. I blinked. Licensing? Shell Corp? A pressure built behind my eyes. I forced myself to keep reading. Don't worry. If she pushes, we'll say it's about helping her scale. Play to her guilt. Use the mom angle. Works every time. The screen went blurry. I wasn't sure if it was from rage or the tears I refused to let fall. He hadn't just stolen my trust. He was mocking it. My hand hovered above the trackpad, but I didn't close the file. I couldn't. I read it again, slower this time, each word slicing deeper. Somewhere in me, a scream curled, begging to break out. But instead I let out a single breath. Controlled. Thin. The silence buzzed louder than noise ever could. In the next moment, I grabbed my coat. 15 minutes later, I was sitting across from Talon at his favorite 24-hour diner. The neon lights above buzzed softly, casting his smug expression in pale green. His hair was too perfect for this hour, like he'd been expecting me. "You came," he said, sipping his coffee like we were catching up, not mid-betrayal. "I found the email," I said, voice low, steady. He blinked just once, then smiled. "You mean the draft? It wasn't sent." He leaned back, stretching his arm along the booth. "You really should calm down, Lyra. You've been overworked. A little paranoid, maybe." That word, paranoid. It hit something primal. He always used it when he wanted me to doubt myself. When we were kids, and I accused him of hiding my sketchbook. Paranoid. When I found out he canceled my college portfolio submission behind my back. Paranoid. He looked down at his phone, scrolling like I didn't matter. I leaned forward. "You said you'd help me scale. Instead, you're licensing my designs to some shell company and planning to sell my brand." He didn't flinch, just sipped. "You should be thanking me," he said flatly. "Your cute little studio? That doesn't cut it anymore. This is how real businesses grow. We take it public, you keep your name, we cash out. Everybody wins." "You mean you win?" I shot back. He tilted his head. "Oh, come on, don't make this emotional. It's just business. Mom agrees." My fists clenched beneath the table, nails digging into my palms, and yet a part of me still hoped he'd say it wasn't what it looked like, that he regretted it, that somewhere buried beneath the arrogance was the brother who once helped me build my first workbench. But he didn't flinch, didn't falter, just scrolled. I stood up. "You'll regret this," I said quietly. "Not likely," he said, still not looking at me. "Family's messy, but at the end of the day, I'm the one holding the receipts." Outside, the air was colder than it had been when I arrived. Damp. Still. I got into my car, shut the door, and just sat there, watching the fog crawl along the windshield, headlights of passing cars smearing through the condensation like watercolor. My phone buzzed. A text from Maris. "Honey, Talon said you're upset. Let's talk tomorrow. Remember, we're family." I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then pressed play on the audio I'd saved from the Zoom call. Their voices, those familiar, casual betrayals, filled the silence again. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Instead, I drove straight back to the studio, made a backup of everything, every design file, every invoice, every login trail. Then I did something I hadn't done since I was 19. I Googled intellectual property attorney Austin TX and emailed 3. The next morning, I met one of them, Grace Liu, a copyright lawyer who didn't blink once when I laid it all out. "They're playing dirty," she said, scanning the documents. "But if that email's legit and you have timestamps on your design files, we've got leverage, and fast." Her confidence steadied me. For the first time in days, my breath came easy. My spine straightened. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was building something new. But that peace didn't last long. That afternoon, just as I was organizing my files into a secure cloud drive, a notification popped up. Access attempt denied. User unknown. I froze, then clicked into the system log. Someone had just tried to enter my admin panel, using credentials tied to an old family IP address. I felt the cold return, but this time not from fear, from clarity. They were still watching me, still trying to gut me clean. And as I stared at the red warning message blinking at the top of my screen, one question rang louder than the rest. Who else is helping them? There's a kind of rage that doesn't scream. It doesn't throw plates or tear through rooms. It sits, it sketches, it waits. That's the kind of rage I felt the next morning, alone in my studio, hunched over my drawing table, while the sky outside glowed with the soft gray of early dawn. The air inside was still, the only sound the scrape of pencil on paper, and the hum of my old space heater kicking in beneath the desk. I wasn't designing anything new. Not really. I was redrawing old pieces, line by line, as if tracing them could keep me tethered to something true. But my hands shook, and every so often I found myself gripping the pencil too tight, the wood digging into the base of my thumb. The betrayal sat heavy in my chest, dull and constant. I kept replaying the moment in the diner. Talon's smug face, the way he sipped his coffee while he gutted me with words. The way he said, "It's just business." My grandfather would have spat on that. I reached for one of his old drafting pencils. The weight of it felt right in my hand, solid, familiar. The graphite was still sharp from the last time I'd used it. Years ago. My fingers curled around it like a lifeline. And then I started to move. I sketched for hours, losing track of time, letting the rhythm of lines and curves quiet my thoughts. When the tears came, they didn't fall loud. They slipped down the sides of my face, slow and silent, soaking the edge of the paper before I even noticed. I didn't wipe them away. I just kept drawing. Eventually, I stood, legs stiff, joints aching. I walked to the window and looked out over the street. A delivery truck passed. A woman walked her dog, bundled in a thick jacket, earbuds in. The world moved on, like none of this had happened, like I wasn't unraveling behind glass. But inside me, something else had settled. Not peace, not yet, but a kind of clarity. I walked over to my laptop and opened it again. I started backing everything up. Design files, client communications, concept logs, purchase orders, copyrights. Then I called Grace, the attorney. "I want to move fast," I told her. "You're doing the right thing," she said. I wasn't so sure about that, but I knew I couldn't sit still anymore. I ordered 2 new hard drives, created multiple backups in encrypted folders, set up 2-factor authentication on every login I could think of, locked down my entire digital world like a fortress. By the time I finished, my hands were steady again. The sun had risen fully now, casting thin beams of light across the floorboards. They shimmered faintly against the sawdust that clung to the edges of the room. I reached for my phone to check the time. That's when the text came through. From Talon. Family meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m., Mom's request, don't be late. No apology, no context, just another order. I stared at the message until the words blurred. My pulse ticked in my neck. I could feel my breath growing shallow, chest tightening. Why did they think I'd just show up? Why did they still think they had that kind of power over me? I closed my eyes and remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. I was 13. It was the night after Maris slapped me for spilling tea on her client's carpet. I'd locked myself in my room, sitting on the floor, arms wrapped around my knees. I didn't cry. I didn't move. And then, Grandpa knocked. He didn't say anything at first. Just sat beside me, back against the door, separated by a few inches and one sheet of plywood. I know what it feels like, he said, to be invisible in your own house. That night, he left a sketch pad outside my door. Inside was a single note, "Make them see you." Now, in my studio, years later, I opened that same sketch pad. The cover was worn, the pages yellowed at the edges, but the note was still there. "Make them see you." I ran my fingers over the words. They had taken so much, mocked me, dismissed me, plotted behind my back. But they hadn't erased me, not yet. I opened a fresh page and began to sketch again, this time with intention, not just furniture, a concept, something modular, inclusive, scalable, something that didn't just belong to me, something I could build into a wall they couldn't climb. Halfway through the sketch, my phone lit up again, unknown number, one new voicemail. I played it, speaker low, a woman's voice, casual but clipped. "Hey, this is Maris, just reminding you about tomorrow. I know things have been tense, but family's what matters. Let's talk like adults. Maybe bring those new designs? I think they'll calm Talon down." I stood there, blinking. Calm Talon down? Like I was the problem? Like I'd disrupted his peace? I let out a short, bitter laugh. My jaw tightened. My grip on the phone did too. They hadn't even pretended to deny it. And yet they still expected me to sit at their table, hand over my work, smile through clenched teeth. Not this time. I walked back to the drafting table, picked up the sketch I'd just finished, looked at it carefully. A new collection, built on Grandpa's principles. Simple lines, human-centered design, sustainable materials. But with a different twist this time, function and message. This wasn't just about reclaiming my name anymore. It was about reimagining what it could stand for. I glanced at the legal folder on my desk, then at the old sticky note with Grandpa's writing. Use this if they turn. They had turned, and I was ready. But one question still lingered, low, persistent, cold. What were they planning to spring on me at that meeting? They underestimated the power of paper and graphite, and they forgot who I learned from. The morning of the so-called family meeting, I didn't dress for peace. I dressed for war. Black turtleneck, hair pinned tight, no jewelry, just clean lines, steady breath, and my grandfather's old sketch rolled carefully into a protective tube by my side. The sun had barely crested the skyline, casting long gold lines through the windows of my studio. I paused at the door before locking up, took one last look at the space that held me through every betrayal. My fortress, made of sawdust, sweat, and solitude. As I stepped into the cold, the sky stretched cloudless above the cracked Texas asphalt. The silence felt rehearsed, like the world knew something was coming. I parked 2 houses down from Maris's place. I didn't want them watching me pull up, measuring my confidence by the car I chose or how long I sat in the driveway. Inside, everything was as I remembered. Bland beige walls, a hint of fake lemon polish in the air, the faint hum of an air purifier always a size too loud. Talon was already there, sitting at the head of the dining table, phone in hand, no doubt checking some spreadsheet that helped him sleep at night. Maris emerged from the kitchen with coffee that smelled expensive but impersonal. She offered me a mug I didn't touch. "Glad you made it," she said with a practiced smile. I nodded once. "Let's get to it." Talon didn't look up right away. When he finally did, it was with that same tired smirk, the one he wore when he'd already made his move. "I've prepared a few slides," he said, tapping the laptop beside him. "We're calling it a soft brand evolution. Same vibe, new name, same designs, just updated packaging. You'll still be credited as founder, of course." Of course. The heat that climbed up my chest didn't reach my face. I kept my jaw locked and my voice even. "I assume this is the part where you hand me a check and expect me to disappear." Talon chuckled. "No need to be dramatic. We're not pushing you out. We're just pushing forward." Maris touched his arm. "Lyra, sweetheart, it's not betrayal, it's positioning." I set the tube on the table. "No, this is positioning." I unrolled the sketch, smoothing its corners until it stretched flat across the polished wood. Both of them leaned in. It was one of Grandpa's original pieces, but not just any. This one had never been made public. A sleek, sustainable modular desk he called the Freedom Line, hidden from the market, tucked inside his personal archive. I waited. Talon's brow furrowed. "Where did you get this?" I met his gaze. He gave it to me, along with the rights, hand-signed in 2016. Maris looked confused, eyes flicking between the sketch and me. "Your grandfather never showed this to us." "That's the point," I said quietly. "He knew exactly who to trust." Then I pulled out the second page, the note I'd found tucked behind the sketchpad weeks ago. 6 words in his handwriting. "Use this if they turn." Maris blinked. He was being poetic. I laughed once, sharp, joyless. He was being clear. And then I leaned in. "I'm building something based on this, a non-profit model, open source collaboration, the exact opposite of what you're trying to turn my work into." Talon's face darkened. "You'll never fund it alone." I didn't answer, because I knew he wasn't entirely wrong. The anger burned low in me, controlled now, refined. But that wasn't the twist. That wasn't what rattled me. It happened later, after I left the meeting, after I drove back to the studio and scanned the sketch into my system, just like I'd done with the rest of my backup documents. There, scribbled faintly in the bottom margin, so light I'd missed it before, was a line of numbers. I zoomed in, 6 digits, followed by a symbol, a code. At first I thought it was some inventory tag, a date maybe, but when I cross-referenced it with Grandpa's filing system, it didn't match any product ID or design number. I opened his old external drive, the one I'd salvaged from the workshop after his funeral, and searched the digits. One result. A locked file. No name. No description. Just a prompt. Enter key. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Breath caught halfway in my throat. Was this his backup plan? Something deeper than a sketch? Another layer to the legacy he tried to protect? I didn't know. But I did know this. Talon and Maris weren't just trying to sell a brand. They were trying to bury a bloodline. And my grandfather, brilliant, stubborn, visionary, might have seen that coming from miles away. I typed in the 6 digits, pressed enter. The screen blinked, the file opened. And what I saw inside wasn't just a design. It was a map, a business framework, a philosophy, a list of names, people he'd once trusted, people who owed him, people I'd never met. Until now. I used to think legacies were made of wood and memory. Turns out mine was hidden in a folder named Freedom 01. It wasn't just a design. It was a blueprint for something larger, a nonprofit infrastructure, scalable app mock-ups, and a list of names Grandpa had labeled simply builders. Some had crossed through. Some were starred. One name was double underlined, Jasper Cole. I'd heard the name before years back. He was the kind of tech founder everyone in Austin knew, gritty, weirdly low profile, obsessed with ethical design. Grandpa must have worked with him during his final projects, but I never knew they were close. I typed Jasper's name into LinkedIn. His profile popped up in seconds. Scruffy headshot, 1-line bio. Build it better or don't build at all. I didn't overthink it. I messaged him, told him who I was, told him what I found. Didn't beg, didn't pitch, just told the truth. He replied 20 minutes later. "Come by the hub tomorrow, noon. Bring the file." The tech hub was in East Austin, all glass and wood panels and overgrown rooftop gardens, some post-industrial Eden for people who code in hoodies and dream in wireframes. I walked in carrying a sketch tube and a thumb drive. My palms were sweating. Not from fear, but something messier, hope laced with grief. Jasper met me in the lobby. He wore a faded SXSW volunteer shirt and had coffee stains on his sleeve. His handshake was rougher than I expected. "You really Lyra Vance?" he asked. "Last I checked." He led me to a corner desk cluttered with whiteboards, stray bolts, and half-disassembled tablets. I handed him the thumb drive. He plugged it in, brows lifting almost immediately. "Wait, is this Harold's modular plan? He told me it was lost." I nodded. He gave it to me. Hid it, actually. Left a note. "Use this if they turn." Jasper leaned back. His expression shifted, respect softening the edge of curiosity. "Your granddad was a beast," he said. "Genius with his hands, but paranoid. Never trusted the money types. Said they rot the soul of design." I swallowed. He wasn't wrong. We talked for hours. I showed him the framework. The nonprofit idea buried in the margins, a way to crowdsource designs and redistribute royalties to underrepresented creators. A brand with heart instead of a price tag. He was quiet at first, then said 4 words that shifted everything. "Let's rebuild it together." He wasn't offering charity. He was offering alliance. For the first time in weeks, my breath didn't hitch. I nodded, slow, certain. The next few days blurred. We set up a private dev server, uploaded the old blueprints, and began mapping out the app. I sketched interfaces while Jasper coded. At one point, we argued for 30 minutes about button placement, and then laughed like we'd known each other for years. That laughter was new, strange, welcome. He brought in a designer named Malik to help with UX. Elena, my old classmate who now worked in digital strategy, volunteered to consult. We called ourselves a skeleton crew, but the bones felt strong. I wasn't just defending my name anymore. I was building something untouchable. Then the call came. Talon. I didn't answer the first time. Didn't answer the second either. Third time I picked up, put him on speaker, left the mic muted. His voice filled the room. "I know what you're doing," he said, flat and cold. "This little rebellion? Think it's clever? It's sloppy, unprofessional. You're going to tank your own legacy." I didn't speak. Jasper just looked at me, then back to his screen, unfazed. Talon continued, voice sharpening. "You don't want this fight. I've got investors lined up. You go against us, you'll be crushed before beta testing." Then a pause, a breath. "Lyra, I'm trying to help. Let me help." The silence I gave him in return was the most honest thing I could offer. I hung up. Later that night, we ordered Thai and watched the app's first clickable prototype load onto my screen. It wasn't pretty yet, but it worked. There it was, a living thing, born from grief and betrayal, built on my grandfather's faith in me. We were celebrating quietly, passing spring rolls and sharing war stories about client disasters, when Jasper's face shifted. He looked at his phone, frowned. "You didn't post anything about this project yet, right?" "No," I said. "Why?" He flipped the screen toward me. Talon had just posted a cryptic tweet. "Innovation can't be stolen unless it was never yours to begin with." My stomach twisted. He was watching. Maybe not just him. I checked the app's dev logs. There it was again. Another access attempt. Same masked IP. They were trying to get in. Jasper leaned closer, voice low. "Lyra, they're watching us." I felt it like a weight down my spine. "They're scared," I whispered. Jasper nodded. Or desperate. Either way, we weren't invisible anymore. When you fight for something long enough, you stop waiting for attacks to come through the front door. You start watching the shadows. It was just past midnight when I got the alert. VanceWorks brand listing activity. New bid received. Amount, $1,500,000 bidder. Anonymous. I stared at the screen, jaw tightening. The brand wasn't even publicly listed. Not yet. This wasn't just aggressive, it was surgical. I refreshed the page. Same message, same shadowy figure placing money on a name they thought they could steal. Jasper sat on the other side of the co-working space, earbuds in, coding like the future depended on it. I motioned him over. Someone placed a private bid on my brand, 1.5. He leaned in, scanning the screen. "That's not just a buyout, that's a flex." I nodded. "You think it's Talon?" "Maybe. But he doesn't usually hide behind anonymity. He likes power being visible." We both sat there, staring at the number. It felt like blood money. The bid meant one thing: they knew what we were building, and they were trying to cut it off before it got roots. I clicked into the metadata. The bidder used a proxy system, nothing traceable, but something about the email domain looked familiar. I opened my old records from the early VanceWorks days, back when I first filed incorporation paperwork. There it was, a contact email tied to one of Talon's holding companies. The bidder wasn't anonymous. They were connected. "I think this whole thing was staged," I said slowly. "They're pretending to buy my brand through a third party so they can claim they didn't force me out." Jasper rubbed his jaw. "Legal gray zone, but it's smart. On paper, it looks like a willing transfer. Optics over truth." My fingers hovered over the mouse. I wanted to decline the offer. I wanted to scream. But part of me knew this wasn't about that number. It was about timing. They were trying to shake me or distract me, maybe both. "I'm not responding," I said finally. "Not yet." Later that day, Elena swung by the office to drop off coffee and updates on our social outreach strategy. She glanced at the whiteboard packed with launch tasks, then at me. "You look like you slept in a war zone." "I did. Financial warfare." She frowned, then leaned against the desk. "I hate to say it, but this isn't random. That bidder? It's their next play. If they can't take your soul, they'll try to buy your skin." That line stayed with me. I opened my inbox later that evening and found something worse. A new email. Subject line: "Withdraw or lose everything." No signature, no sender name, just a link. A countdown timer. 48 hours left. My chest went cold. Jasper looked over my shoulder. "Don't click that." I didn't need to. I knew what it was. An ultimatum. They weren't hiding anymore. Whoever was behind this, Talon, Maris, or some faceless investor in their orbit, was watching, waiting, and escalating. "We need to tighten up the launch timeline," I said, heart pounding. "We'll burn out," Jasper warned. "You haven't slept more than 3 hours in days." "I'll rest when they stop breathing down my neck." But he was right. The weight in my limbs told me I was running on fumes. My mind was buzzing too fast, my vision a step behind my thoughts. Still, I kept going. I reviewed the app UI, made notes, rebuilt our pitch deck. We had less than 2 weeks to lock in our beta testers, and every delay could be used against us. I went home late that night, too tired to cry. But when I passed the mirror, I saw her again. Not the version of me they painted, not the time waster, but the woman who didn't flinch anymore. I reached for my phone and opened Grandpa's sketch again. At the bottom, beside his signature, I noticed something I hadn't read before. It was faded, so faint it blended with the pencil grain. "Your design is your defense." I exhaled slowly. He knew. He knew that when people can't control the creator, they come for the creation. And that was exactly what was happening now. The next morning, I met Elena at the studio. She carried a manila folder, lips pressed into a grim line. "I found something," she said, laying the folder flat on the table. "Back when I worked in digital branding, I helped design pitch decks for a firm that specializes in hostile brand takeovers." She opened the folder. Inside were screenshots of presentation slides, VanceWorks mock-ups, my color palette, my tagline. And guess who the client was? She slid a final image forward. Reed Strategies, LLC, Talon's other company. I stared at it, at my work, repurposed, renamed, polished like it had never passed through my hands. They weren't just stealing my brand, they were laundering it, pretending they were its origin. I felt it then, that mix of nausea and fury that only comes when someone tries to erase you while you're still breathing. Elena whispered, "What are you going to do?" I picked up my phone and opened the group chat I had with Jasper and our dev team. Then typed, "We're going public. Tomorrow night. Soft launch plus live stream reveal. I'll handle the front end. Make sure the servers don't crash." No one responded right away. Then Jasper texted back, "Copy. Let's blow the lid off." But in the pit of my stomach, one thing lingered. That anonymous email, that countdown, that bidder. I had a feeling this wasn't their final move, and if I wasn't careful, the next hit might not come through a screen. I've always hated video calls, too sterile, too performative, too easy to hide behind a smile. But this time I needed the mask to crack. We set the Zoom link for 6:30 p.m., prime time for controlled chaos. Jasper helped with the tech setup from the other room, double-checking the recording and screen capture backups. I paced in front of my desk, earbuds in, palms clammy despite the cool air drifting in through the open studio window. I'd sent the invite to 3 people, Talon, Maris, and myself. I wanted them to feel safe, wanted them to think I was coming back to heal. Talon joined first, of course. Perfect lighting, crisp shirt framed by the sleek interior of some rented conference room. He looked like he was ready to present at a board meeting. Maris came in next, adjusting the angle of her laptop with just enough effort to look casual. She wore a soft lavender blouse, the same one she wore to my high school graduation, back when she smiled at me like I was still hers. I waited a few seconds before unmuting. "Thanks for joining," I said, trying to keep my voice even. Maris leaned forward. "Lyra, we're glad you reached out. Things have been tense, but maybe this is a chance to talk," Talon interrupted, eyes locking onto mine through the screen. "Privately. No lawyers, no theatrics." "No lies," I said. He offered a smirk. "Of course." I let the silence stretch. Then I clicked share screen. At first, nothing dramatic, just a project folder, my designs. The mock-ups Talon had tried to repurpose under his shell company. Slide after slide, color palettes, form iterations, branding language that matched my old files word for word. Maris shifted in her chair. Her face flickered. "You've made your point," Talon said, his tone clipped. "I'm not done." I opened the audio file, the same one I'd saved from the original Zoom call, the one they never knew I recorded. The betrayal they performed when they thought I wasn't watching. "She's just a time waster. We give her credit to shut her up." The sound echoed through the studio. Even Jasper paused typing in the next room. Maris covered her mouth, eyes wide. Talon froze. I didn't stop the playback. "She still thinks the brand is hers. We let her think that until the ink dries." When the audio ended, I muted my mic and stared at the screen. They were speechless. Finally, Talon leaned forward. "You're bluffing," he hissed. "You can't use that. It's illegal. Recording without consent." "Texas is a one-party consent state," I replied calmly. I was the party. He blinked. I watched his confidence falter for the first time. Maris's voice cracked. "Lyra, we didn't mean—" "You meant every word," I said. "But it's okay, because now I do too." I clicked record on the call, made it obvious this time. Talon's jaw tightened. "You think a viral sob story will save your brand?" I smiled, small, deliberate. "No, but it'll bury yours." His face twisted. "You'll regret this." There it was, the last card he had. Intimidation. I tilted my head slightly. I already did, but not anymore. Then I ended the call. The silence that followed wasn't silence at all. It buzzed, charged, like the air after lightning strikes but before thunder rolls. Jasper came in from the next room. We got it. All angles, all backups. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours, but the victory didn't feel clean. It didn't come with fireworks or clarity, just a strange hollowness. Maris's face haunted me. How quickly it changed from confidence to panic. There had been a flicker of something there. Shame? Or just fear of exposure? I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. My reflection hovered faintly in the black Zoom window. I looked older, tired, but sharper, less naive. The messages started coming in less than 20 minutes later. A friend from college, a former client. A woman I'd never met who said she watched the clip on a Reddit thread already gaining traction. "Is this real? Are you okay? Where can I support your new project?" I hadn't even posted anything yet, but someone had. The video leaked, and it was spreading like wildfire. Then the phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Another buzz, text from Maris. "You didn't have to humiliate us." I stared at the message. Us. Not me, not Talon, us. Even now, she grouped herself with the villain, and still couldn't see why I stepped out of that circle. I typed back, "You chose the lie, I chose the light." I didn't wait for a reply. The launch clock ticked down, 36 hours to go. The Freedom Line project was prepped, the prototype app nearly live. Jasper and Elena were polishing final copy. Malik was cleaning the interface. Everything was ready, but something still gnawed at the edges. That anonymous email, the 1.5 ARM bidder, the countdown I never acknowledged. And then a new email pinged. Subject line, "You made your move, now watch ours." Attachment, Final terms, .docs, no sender, no footer. Just the logo from my old website, altered, distorted, almost mocking. I opened the file and froze, because the terms weren't a legal threat. They were an announcement, an event. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. live press conference, and under it, just 4 words: we're launching without you. There's a sound the truth makes when it hits the air, like glass cracking, not shattered yet, but there's no undoing it. That's what I felt the moment our live stream passed 20,000 viewers. Not fear, not pride, just impact. I stood in my studio, bathed in the glow of the soft ring light, hands loose at my sides. Behind me, Jasper monitored bandwidth like a soldier in a bunker. Elena read the comments aloud in bursts. Malik handled the integration screens, adjusting the layouts as reactions flooded in. The silence on Talon and Maris's side was louder than any denial. They'd ended their launch stream early. No apology, no explanation. Just a screen that said, "Thanks for attending." But ours? Ours was still burning bright. I spoke straight into the camera. "My name is Lyra Vance. The brand you just watched them try to launch was stolen. The designs, the philosophy, the legacy, they were mine. Until my own family tried to sell them off behind my back." I paused, then tapped the laptop to share the next slide. A video clip, 1 minute, the Zoom call, their words. She still thinks it's hers. We let her feel involved, then we move fast. Their voices played raw, unedited. I kept my eyes on the camera, watched the comments explode again. This is insane. She has the receipts. Cancel Talon Read now. I just donated. And then I showed them what we built. The Freedom Line homepage went live on screen. Open source, collaborative furniture designs, empowerment over profit, a foundation in Grandpa's name. People flooded in, donations surged, small ones, big ones, and then $500,000. It flashed across the screen like a spark in a blackout. Jasper said nothing. He just stared. "It's real," Malik whispered. "Anonymous. Clean source." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Whoever it was believed in me enough to bankroll the revolution. Not in secret, but in defiance. Maybe Grandpa planned this. Maybe it was someone from his list. Or maybe the universe just decided I'd earned my moment. But even as I stood there, chest rising and falling with adrenaline and something close to relief, I felt it. They weren't done. The final dagger came not from Talon, not from Maris, but from the outside. A ping, a direct message, no sender ID, no icon, just one line. I was paid to stay quiet. Then another. "You don't know everything. You need to look deeper." I froze. Elena leaned over my shoulder, eyes scanning. "What does that mean?" But I didn't answer, because suddenly it wasn't just about the designs. It was about the silence, the things I'd missed, the things they never said out loud. I ended the live stream with a steady voice. "Thank you for standing with me. This is just the beginning. We're not a product, we're a movement." The chat roared. Then I clicked off. The room went still. I turned slowly and sat down. My hands were trembling, not from exposure, but from the undercurrent. "What if it's not over?" I whispered. "It's not," Jasper said. "You just changed the game. They'll come back harder, or sneakier." I looked back at my laptop. The anonymous comment haunted me. I was paid to stay quiet. Who? What did they see? What did I miss? I opened my emails, typed in keywords from old legal threads, documents I thought I'd already combed through. Buried in a chain between Talon and a consultant was a familiar name. A woman who used to work at the first firm that helped file my design patents. The same one that suddenly dropped my contract. No explanation, no follow-up. Back then I assumed budget cuts. Now, I wasn't so sure. Jasper watched me scroll, tension pulling at the edges of his expression. "What are you thinking?" "That this goes deeper. That the theft didn't start when I heard the Zoom call. It started before that, quietly, legally, invisibly." Malik stood from his stool. "You think they planted someone?" I didn't have proof, not yet. But the pit in my stomach told me I was circling the truth. "Maris and Talon aren't that smart," I murmured. "Not on their own." "They had help?" Elena asked. "Someone with legal access, someone who knew how to vanish a founder without leaving a trail." And just like that, it hit me. The shell company that bid on my brand. The fake license transfer that nearly went through. The consultant who ghosted me. They didn't just want to steal my name. They wanted to make me disappear from my own legacy. And maybe they still did. A knock on the studio door broke the silence. We all turned. I wasn't expecting anyone. Not deliveries, not interviews, just silence. Another knock. Jasper moved first, checked the peephole. His shoulders stiffened. He turned to me, voice low. "It's her." "Who?" He stepped aside. Maris, standing in the hallway. No makeup, no lavender blouse, just a neutral coat, hair tied back, face pale. And in her hands, a white envelope. She stood in the doorway like someone who'd walked through a hurricane and didn't know yet if she'd survived. Maris, hair flat from wind, coat buttoned too high. The envelope in her hand bent slightly where her thumb gripped too tight. None of us spoke. I stepped forward and opened the door wider. She entered slowly, like the space itself might judge her. Jasper kept his distance, arms crossed. Elena shifted closer to the desk but didn't sit. Malik left the room entirely. "Just you," Maris said quietly. "Please." I glanced back at them. 5 minutes. She waited until the door clicked shut behind them before speaking. "I didn't know about the anonymous bidder," she said. "Or the fake launch schedule. That was all Talon." "You signed documents," I said. "Documents that gave him access." "I thought it was a rebrand," she said, voice shaking now. "He told me it was to protect your future. He used your name like it was a formality." I wanted to believe her, but wanting and trusting aren't the same. She handed me the envelope. "Open it." Inside was a single page, a notarized statement. It listed her withdrawal from Reed Strategies LLC, effective immediately, and confirmed that she waived any claims to VanceWorks, Freedom Line, and all intellectual property attached to my name. I read it twice. Maris spoke again. "It's done. I'm out." She stared at me like she wanted absolution, like the paper made her clean. "I thought family meant protecting what we built," she whispered, "but maybe it means letting go of what we ruined." I didn't reply, because I wasn't ready to forgive, but I could choose not to fight a ghost. "Thank you," I said finally. "That's all I needed." She left without asking for anything back. No hug, no apology, no explanation that could undo the damage. Just silence. By the time I turned back toward the studio, the others had already shifted back to work mode. I handed Jasper the envelope. "Get this to Grace. Make it legal." He nodded, expression unreadable. Elena looked up. "You okay?" "No, but I'm moving." Because the next day was launch day. XSW, Freedom Line's debut. A panel, a prototype, and a public platform they couldn't steal. The venue buzzed with nervous energy. Rows of chairs filled faster than expected. We weren't on the main stage, but we weren't invisible anymore either. The lights above us pulsed soft gold, a warmth that made me feel seen. Jasper adjusted my mic. Malik queued up the app's walkthrough. Elena paced near the entrance, her phone already vibrating with media inquiries. I took the stage. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. That was the twist. I wasn't afraid. "I'm Lyra Vance," I said, voice clear. "And I'm here because sometimes what breaks you becomes the blueprint." The audience was quiet, leaning in. I was called a time waster, a liability, a placeholder in my own company. But this, I gestured to the display behind me, where the Freedom Line logo glowed, is the result of being underestimated. I told them about Grandpa's sketches, about the values behind each curve and joint, about design that held people, not just profit. Then I stepped aside as Jasper demonstrated the live app, rotating 3D furniture models with embedded creator bios, open-source mod kits, and a transparent ledger showing revenue distribution to contributors. We didn't call it a product. We called it a movement. The applause came slowly, but then it grew, like something that couldn't be unheard. Reporters pushed in, hands raised, voices layered over each other. "How did you recover after being shut out of your own brand?" "Was it your brother who leaked your files?" "Did you know about the anonymous donation?" I answered only what mattered. "This isn't about revenge," I said. "It's about reclamation, the difference between ownership and authorship." We ended the showcase on a live Q&A. One woman in the front row, probably in her 60s, tears in her eyes, asked softly, What would your grandfather say if he saw this?" I didn't answer right away, because I felt him there, in the smell of unfinished wood, in the curve of the chairs we'd modeled after his originals, in the echo of the applause that followed my closing line. He'd say we finally stopped asking for permission. Later, after the lights dimmed and the crowds cleared, we sat on the curb outside the venue, me, Jasper, Elena, Malik. The air was thick with spring heat and fried food from a stand nearby. We passed a bottle of sparkling water like it was champagne. "We did it," Elena whispered. "No," I said, watching the city lights. "We started it." Then my phone buzzed. New message, unknown number. "One signature doesn't erase what he still holds. Check the third file, the one marked Delphi. You missed something." My blood ran cold. Jasper saw my face and leaned in. "What is it?" I didn't answer. I opened the drive. There it was. Tucked beneath legal scans and pitch decks. Del PI 23-DF last modified 6 weeks ago, by Talon. I clicked, and what I saw wasn't a plan to launch. It was a plan to destroy. It was called Delphi 23, 6 weeks old, hidden in plain sight, modified by Talon, a digital snake coiled in silence. And when I opened it, the venom hit fast. It wasn't just a takedown plan, it was scorched earth, a playbook for dismantling Freedom Line from the inside. Target our dev contributors through NDA manipulation. Leak a false story to discredit our nonprofit status. Redirect traffic using trademark duplicates. Freeze assets with legal injunctions. All signed under a shadow firm I didn't recognize, but when I traced it through Grace's network, one layer deeper, it routed straight back to Reed Strategies LLC. He'd planned it all, not as a counterstrike, as a backup, in case I rose. Jasper stood behind me, reading over my shoulder, eyes narrowing with each bullet point. "He's not trying to win," he said quietly. "He wants to salt the ground." "I think he already did," I whispered, because there, at the bottom of the file, was the final step. Phase 4, reclaim family trust clause and assert full legacy rights via Hale Estate. I didn't breathe for a moment. Family trust. That meant Maris. That meant she still had power. Or maybe she gave it away. "We need to finish this," I said, face to face. 2 hours later, I was pulling into the driveway of the old family house, the one I hadn't set foot in since the first betrayal. The Texas sun was low, bleeding amber through the pecan trees. Smoke curled from the grill in the backyard. Laughter echoed faintly over classic country music. A family BBQ, the kind we used to have before everything twisted. I wasn't invited. I came anyway. Inside, the air smelled like charred meat and expensive perfume. I stepped through the open sliding door onto the patio. And just like that, Talon turned. He was mid-conversation with 2 investors I recognized from his LinkedIn Flex posts. Maris stood at the buffet, holding a plate she clearly wasn't hungry for. They froze. The music didn't. I didn't wait. "I'm done," I said, loud enough for every conversation to drop. Talon stepped forward, fake casual. "Lyra, this really isn't the place." "Wrong," I said. "This is exactly the place." I pulled a folder from my bag. "You want to talk about the trust? Let's do it." I handed it to Maris. She opened it slowly. Inside, a full breakdown of the Dell PHI 23 document, the shell companies, the trademark redirects, the estate clause. She went pale. "I never approved this," she whispered. Talon shrugged. "You didn't have to. You gave me access." I turned to her, voice sharp. "You still have time to revoke it." For the first time, I saw her crack, not in fear, but in grief. "I just wanted peace," she said, "to make things right between you." "Then start by picking a side," I said. "Because this," I held up the final page, "this is war." Talon's eyes darkened. "You really want to do this here? In front of everyone?" "Yes," I said, "because they should know what kind of visionary you really are." The investors shifted awkwardly. "You lied. You manipulated. You tried to bury me alive in my own blueprint." He stepped forward. "Too close. You're making a scene." "No," I said. "I'm making a boundary." I pulled another sheet from the folder. A signed legal motion to sever any shared business, personal, or inheritance ties between myself and the Reed Hale entity. Grace had it drawn up in anticipation of this moment. I handed it to him. Effective immediately, I said. You no longer own my name, my story, or a single pixel of my legacy. He didn't take it, so I dropped it at his feet. Maris finally spoke again, voice trembling. You'd cut ties with us completely? I turned to her. You already did. Silence. Then I turned and walked away. No fanfare, no victory music, just the rhythmic crunch of gravel under my boots. Back at the studio, the team was waiting. Elena brought cake. Malik opened a bottle of Prosecco. Jasper stood near the window, arms folded, watching me closely. You okay? He asked. I nodded. No, but I'm freer than I've ever been. We toasted with plastic cups and hollow laughs. But there was real relief in the air, a clearing, a shift, and for a few hours it felt like maybe we'd outrun it all. But then, just after midnight, a new message arrived, from a secure legal email. Not Talon, not Maris, a third name, one I hadn't seen before. Attached was a formal petition, requesting full audit of the Freedom Line Foundation's funding sources, claiming conflict of interest, claiming fraud, filed in federal court, the subject line, motion to dissolve, Vance estate misuse, and in the corner, a name I recognized, Elena Ortiz. I stared at the petition on my screen, the name at the bottom burning brighter than the legal jargon above it. Elena Ortiz. It didn't make sense. We'd built this together. She stood beside me when the dust was still settling. But now? Now she was filing to dissolve my nonprofit for alleged fraud. A cold draft slipped through the studio window. My hand tightened around the ceramic mug I hadn't sipped in hours. The tea was cold. So was I. I called her. She picked up on the third ring, voice low. You saw it. Tell me why. A pause. Then she said, because Talon threatened my family. My dad's pension fund is tied to one of his firms. If I didn't sign, they'd pull it. I pressed the phone harder against my ear as if force could turn the truth into something else. I helped build Freedom Line, she said, but I wasn't ready to watch it burn because of a name. You could have told me, I whispered. I'm telling you now. We hung up in silence, and that silence said everything I needed to know. The next morning, I met Grace at the courthouse with the paperwork in hand. We didn't file a countersuit. We filed ownership consolidation, because Elena's claim was tied to a loophole in the founding structure. So I closed the loop, shifted the foundation under my full control, temporarily, just enough to block the dissolution request. Talon lost the trust clause, Elena lost her seat, and I lost whatever was left of hoping for clean lines. 2 weeks later, the board was reformed, the funding was secured, and the investigation was dropped. The day the final ruling came in, I stood at the edge of the community center we'd renovated as Freedom Line's new home base. The walls were painted in soft earth tones, sunlight dancing across shelves of tactile models. Women from all backgrounds sketched, carved, soldered, and coded side by side. Tools clicked, voices murmured, ideas passed from one set of hands to another. Jasper joined me by the window. You still checking over your shoulder? I exhaled. Not anymore, but I remember how it felt. Good, he said. That's how you build right. The grand opening came with no ribbon, just a plaque, simple steel, mounted near the entrance. The Freedom Line Foundation, in honor of Harold Vance. My fingers brushed over the engraving. He always knew. He knew they'd try to take what wasn't theirs, knew I'd need more than design to survive it, knew I'd have to decide who I was when the tools weren't in my hands, but in theirs. And he gave me more than blueprints. He gave me armor. Later that evening, I returned to my studio alone. The old sketch pad still sat on the shelf, Grandpa's pencil notes fading but firm. I added one more line on the last page. She didn't just build chairs. She built a seat at the table. Talon? He went quiet. Reed Strategies rebranded under a shell name. Maris moved to Arizona and started volunteering at a botanical garden. Elena? She never reached out again. I didn't chase closure. I lived it, because what I learned was this. Not all betrayals scream. Some whisper, some smile, but all of them teach you who you are when nothing's left but the bones of what you believed in. I don't forgive what they did, but I outgrew it. And sometimes that's louder than any revenge. So if you've been betrayed by family, by silence, by the ones who were supposed to stand beside you, remember, You don't need to fight fire with fire. Sometimes you fight fire by building something that doesn't burn, and that's exactly what I did. Thanks for being here. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Tell us your story in the comments and stay tuned for the next voice that dares to rise.